welcome everyone. Want to welcome everyone to our panel discussion that's Overcoming Barriers to Community College Success. I'm Beth Swanson. I'm the CEO of A Better Chicago. We are a nonprofit venture philanthropy in Chicago, and we invest in high-impact, highly effective organizations serving low-income youth. And we have had the pleasure of supporting 1 million degrees now for about a decade, and their partnership with city colleges. It's just tremendous to see the growth and potential. And they're a great example of what we do, and then I promise I'll move to the rest of the show while we're here, but that we invest unrestricted capital in organizations, and then we provide management support and capacity building support throughout their growth and trajectory. And so to see 1 million degrees, I think it was a little over 100 scholars when we first started investing in 1 million degrees, and now to see it scaling citywide at city colleges a decade later is really incredible, and also a nice example of the power of philanthropy. So we've got a tremendous panel today, and I wanted to just first let them introduce themselves. So I'll start with the Chancellor.
Hello, everybody. Juan Salgado. I'm the Chancellor of City Colleges of Chicago, which is our community college system in the city proper, serving 62,000 students, 75% of which are Latino and African American. And Beth Swanson is my boss as well. Okay, so she's the vice chair of our board.
Yes, I'm also the vice chair of the City Colleges board.
Good morning, everyone. Aneesh, Sohoni, CEO of 1 Million Degrees. It's great to be here. Beth is not officially my boss, but I try to live out in life that as if Beth is my boss, because then I make better decisions. So that's my connection to Beth.
I'm Samir Gadkaree, the president of the Institute for College Access and Success, which is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that works to increase college affordability, access, success, and college accountability, and tries to restore racial equity and economic mobility in higher education. And Beth is my former boss. So that's the running theme.
Yes, when I was at the Joyce Foundation, Samir and I worked together. That's not the theme of this panel. Okay. Tremendous work, and that's what we're going to start with. So we're going to start with the Chancellor. I would love for you to ground the larger conversation that we're going to have just in the City College's vision, because 1 million degrees is obviously a great component of that vision, but you have a much larger, bold goal, right, of 55% completion rate for the entire system, and I know 1 million degrees feeds that, but if you could just talk a little bit about City Colleges and your vision for that.
Well, thank you. Let me just start by making it abundantly clear. We have exceptional students in an exceptional institution. And we know this, right? We've observed this, and we live this every single day. And as an institution, we're also our city's most accessible engine for socioeconomic mobility, right? And by the way, racial equity, because of the makeup of our student body. So we have a lot to say about what kind of city we're going to be, right, in the future. And we have a strategic plan that's all oriented toward ensuring an exceptional student experience for every one of our students, and that is focused on ensuring that we get unprecedented outcomes, right? We know for a fact that when we invest properly and support our students holistically, right, they succeed, they thrive. They go on to be change makers in addition to, their careers. And so we want to do more and more of this, okay? And we're looking for what? We're looking for evidence of what works, right? And when we find evidence of what works, we're going to invest in that, right? Because we know that our students will succeed as a result of that investment. And so that's what the 1 Million Degrees partnership is about. It's about an institution, 1 Million Degrees, that has proven its capability to serve our students extremely well, right? It's about an institution at City Colleges of Chicago that is going to do everything it can to invest in those solutions that work so that our city can get the benefits of these students, these 61,000 students, thriving, advancing, becoming change makers in whatever environment they're in and whatever career that they're in. And so that's what we're up to. We have a universal completion goal of 55%. That goal is oriented towards ensuring that we completely eliminate the gap in student completion that exists in our institution. It has existed for a long, long time, right? Our black students in particular complete at lower rates than our white students. Our Latino students complete at lower rates. And we don't want to close it. We're going to eliminate it. And we're going to be oriented towards every strategy available in order to do so.
Thanks. Aneesh, would you let us know a little bit more about 1 Million Degrees, but also the partnership with the city colleges?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Is my mic working? It's not on? Okay, here, let's switch. All right, is that better? Perfect. Yeah, I mean, thanks, Beth and Juan. I mean, I'll start with where the Chancellor started, right? We have a shared belief that community college students are incredible, and when given access to the right supports and opportunities, will be key to a thriving community for us in Chicago and across the country. And so our mission is to support community college students on their journeys and pathways to economic mobility. We do that through a holistic student support model that helps our students navigate whatever personal challenge they may face that life may throw their way. We support them with their academic and educational journey. We support them with their professional journey, really getting ready for what careers might have to offer for them later. And we also provide financial support, a stipend for our students up to $1,000 a year that they can use for any emergencies or any needs that they might have as they go on in their journey. Why do we use, what's our holistic student support model and what's our belief underneath it? At the end of the day, it's really about community. Making sure our students feel invested in, they see connection back to the hope that they have for themselves and their future. So, prior to this year, we were serving about 900 students across the 7 city colleges of Chicago colleges, plus 3 suburban campuses outside of Chicago. 84% of our students were Black or Latino. Over 50% were first-generation college-going students. And now moving forward, we've sort of launched a new transformational partnership that will allow us to serve thousands more students as well. And the last thing I'll note is just why does this matter, right? I was talking to one of our scholars, Daniel Cowie, who is also an apprentice with the City College of Chicago and part of the OMD program. And I asked Daniel, why did you choose to go to college and become an apprentice? And he said, because somebody finally told me that college is something I should go do, that there was nobody in my life that told me this would be a good opportunity for me. I then asked, why do you succeed? And he said, because I see a group of people who believe in me, right, which makes me believe in myself. And then I said, why do you persist? Why do you keep after it when it's really hard? And he said, it's because I'm working in the job that allows me to see my future as we go. And so the idea of work-based learning and career exposure, I think, is another critical component of our work as well.
Samir, I would love to, you might have to keep rotating, bring you into the conversation around the national perspective on this, because, we feel like there's somewhat of a unique partnership here between higher ed and, the RCT we can talk about, which helped build that evidence base that allowed city colleges to really bring OMD in. But, I guess, how common are these types of partnerships, or do you see that around nationally, or, if you could talk a little bit about the landscape that you're seeing?
Yeah, so, I think one big piece of context that relates to what the Chancellor started with is that city colleges is broadly accessible. It's the engine for economic mobility for the city of Chicago. But nationally, what we see is that despite that great work, despite the goals that we all share around getting more students to the finish line, providing the workforce of the future, community colleges do that work with $78 billion less, according to one estimate, than four-year public universities. So they're educating students who have every right to expect that we will get them to the college finish line, but they're doing it with far fewer resources. Over the last decade, what we've seen is more and more efforts, like 1 Million Degrees, that have not only provided intensive approaches to student success, we call them a comprehensive approach to student success, but then we've seen them evaluate those programs through RCTs and show that they can increase graduation rates by as much as double. What's remarkable and notable about the City College experience is that city colleges and 1 million degrees and the Chicago community have come together to figure out how to scale that program up, to build on that evidence. That's something that we need to do from a policy perspective with federal and state policymakers. That's something that TICAS works with the community to do. But what is remarkable and notable and worthwhile about Chicago and the effort underway right now is scaling up that partnership with philanthropic resources and college resources. And we've seen that in a couple places in the country. San Antonio invests in the Project Quest program. New York invests in CUNY ASAP. But it's really a kind of national leader for that reason.
Yeah, on the philanthropic side, you know, what's the amount now that you've all raised? I think I've stopped counting around the 20 million mark, but it's high.
Yeah, well, the original goal was to raise
Right.
20 million, and we really owe the debt of gratitude to the Pritzker Foundation, who got started with a $5 million gift, and we've been able to raise an additional 10 early on. City Colleges is putting in an additional $5 million, so we raised the full 20. We're still going, and Aneesh can talk about, you know, success beyond that. But one thing I want to make real clear is we have made very clear that at the end of this road of, 4 years with philanthropic support, we are going to continue to support this. We believe the evidence will show that our students will succeed, and we will put institutional resources into sustainable growth of student supports.
Yeah, I was going to say that was key to the philanthropic community as well, being one of the funders of this expansion. But to have it fully sustainable on public resources within 5 years, that feels like the catalytic change that, you know, philanthropy can come in, help support and push, but then have the system then take it on and embed it. But Aneesh, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's describe the partnership a little bit to what we're up to here, right? So, one of the key pieces on the philanthropic side, as you noted, was even for us as a nonprofit, it's not sustainable to be reliant on philanthropy forever, nor do I think it's our role necessarily to just operate in perpetuity without partnering in a more integrated way with the partners at city colleges with whom we work, right? We are in service of the broader goals and aspirations that the city college system has. And so the new partnership has a few key components based on the learnings we have. So Beth, you alluded to the randomized control trial. The Chancellor said we're investing in things that work. So the University of Chicago has been studying the 1 million degrees model through a randomized control trial to say, does it really work? And what they found was if you apply to 1 million degrees, even before you enroll in city colleges, you are 73% more likely to enroll, you're 94% more likely to persist through your first year, and you're 70% more likely to graduate with a degree within 3 years, right? So we have this evidence that this works. And with that evidence in mind, we've made a few fundamental shifts to how we're working together. The first is now moving forward, students will be automatically enrolled into the 1 million degrees program when they enroll in city colleges. Why is this important? Time and time again, when I met with scholars and said, how did you find 1 million degrees? I heard stories of, I saw a recruitment table over there. My friend who I was sitting next to in class happened to just mention how great OMD is, and so I looked it up. These were all stories of luck. And why are we asking students who deserve access to these opportunities to find us? Instead, the burden should be on us to make sure they understand that this opportunity exists and why they should take advantage of it. And so the first key feature of our partnership is to automatically enroll in our program when you enroll in city colleges. The second component is to really integrate how we do work. An example I'll give on this is data related. So prior to this new partnership, our team didn't have access to the student information systems and data that city colleges faculty and advisors had access to, which meant we were sort of operating with incomplete information. It also meant that as our program coordinators who have a 65-to-1 kind of management and caseload ratio, they were meeting with students monthly, if not twice a month. They weren't able to take that data and put it into the system for the city colleges staff and faculty to benefit from as well. So moving forward, we've essentially figured out how to work and have access to the student information systems so that even though we're an independent nonprofit, we can work to enhance the data we have available to us and the data that we can see.
And the last feature of this partnership is we're going to continue to have the University of Chicago research and study this model, right? So to move to an automatic enrollment model is different than the one we've studied. So it's important to keep tracking how this work is going. What's the ultimate impact of this? Within 4 years, we anticipate going from the nearly 900 students across 10 colleges served to 3,500 students served across all of our campuses, with aspirations to go much bigger than that after the 4 years.
We're going to start, I think this is important because equity is at the center of our strategy here. We have already started at Olive Harvey College, which is a predominantly black institution. We are moving over to Malcolm X College, which also serves a large black population. And then we're going to the next two colleges, Harold Washington and Kennedy King, which serve predominantly black students as well. And so we are taking an equity focus to how we're rolling it out. But that will only be 4 colleges. We have 7. And so our intent is to keep growing this as it continues to produce more and more success.
Could you talk a little bit about the conditions for success too? And I know Tikas talks about that as well, but like, you know, this all sounds great, right? But what are the underlying conditions that really help this become successful? And like, why now?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important, and Aneesh, you know, I think really appreciates this too from a nonprofit perspective. It's not the only strategy that we're putting in place at City Colleges of Chicago. It's in combination. The work we're doing with OMD is in combination with many other strategies that we have in place. First and foremost, let me just say that we have a high quality instruction within our institution, evidenced by all the major agreements that we have with 4 universities, including, by the way, the last one, which is with Northwestern University, who has just accepted 57 courses of study for transfer. You know, that's our faculty working with their faculty to ensure that our courses meet the rigorous requirements of Northwestern. Of course that we do. You know, we meet the rigorous requirements of many institutions. We've just been allowed to join this new club, if you will, right? In this, elite mindset, right? And we're glad that that's happening. We have high quality instruction. Number 2 is we're investing heavily in student supports, right? Not just 1 billion degrees. We have wellness centers on every one of our campuses that also have public benefits navigators within them, you know, that have psychological supports for students that are dealing with mental health issues. We're just about to sign on a third-party vendor that will make those supports 24/7. And so you will be able to access mental health supports any day at any hour for any student within City Colleges of Chicago. We have embedded tutoring, we have tutoring, subject matter tutoring. We have disability centers that are well-equipped, veteran centers that are well-equipped. I it go on and on. But we have a set of student supports that are really high impact. And really importantly, we've set up our system to meet the needs of the local economy. And so we have incredibly good relationships with employers. We have relevant curriculum, relevant career pathways that lead to occupations that are in demand in our marketplace. The curriculum has been vetted by those partners, right, and continues to be vetted by those partners. And as I said earlier, our transfer work is really strong. So all of that, coming together, right, will help to enable an ecosystem and environment where 1 million degrees, with the personalized work that it's doing with our students, will have a higher chance of success.
Yeah, I'll jump off that and add a few other things. So, at 1 million degrees, I mentioned we have that 65-to-1 caseload. It allows us, as the Chancellor mentioned, to personalize our supports. But it doesn't mean our program coordinators know everything themselves. So we really view ourselves as understanding the student and understanding all the supports that are available at city colleges and building connections. That's a unique role we can play. So, for example, the wellness centers, really making sure our students know they exist and helping students understand how they can go access it, and then holding them accountable to accessing it when they say that's something that they need as well, is a role we can play. A couple other things I'll just note on this partnership, though. I mean, one, not only are we excited to be part of an ecosystem, but we're excited to be part of a partnership where there's just incredible leadership. Not just the chancellor, of course the chancellor, right? It takes a lot of courage to be open with your data, to be transparent about what work is needed, and to bring in partners like us. But that courage and that leadership exists at every level of the system. The president at Olive Harvey, the president at Malcolm X, their teams every single day are working side by side with our teams to really integrate this to make it work. And so there's leadership, there's courageous leadership, and there's a belief in the power of partnership that's exciting to us. And then the other condition I think that's just really important to note is, we are a homegrown model. What that means is our team has been from day one working side by side with the city colleges, understanding our students and our scholars, understanding the context in which they work and which they operate. And I think that's been a huge part of why this has been possible as well. And so if I zoom out, and maybe Samir can speak to this as well, I think a key lesson to take away is I think there's a lot of organizations working with their local community colleges systems. And the key is to figure out how can you continue to leverage the context and the relationships that you have in your communities paired with what we've learned around the curriculum side, the volunteer coaching and mentoring side, to make this kind of impact possible in every community across the country.
So I might just say to distill 3 things that you heard from both Chancellor Salgado and from Aneesh. There's an intensive investment in advising and supporting students, much more intensive than students would typically receive in a community college setting nationally on average. There's the use of data and leadership to use that data to help students get across the finish line. And then these models, city colleges, 1 million degrees, are addressing the affordability gap that students have, the financial needs that they have that have not been covered by financial aid. And those are attributes of this partnership. Those are things that we see in other programs elsewhere in the country that have an effect on graduation as well. And they speak to the need to address this underinvestment that we have in community college settings broadly, nationally.
I feel like affordability is something, you brought it up, we have to talk about it, given the context we're all working in. But could you share more from the federal perspective? I know Biden administration is working on this issue, but it's a challenging landscape.
Yeah, so to set the scene and to give some context, on average, for a family whose income is below $30,000, they would need to spend 93%, nearly all of their income, in order to be able to attend the average 4-year public university. They would need to spend 2/3 of their family income to send a student through a public 2-year college. And the end result of that is the student debt crisis that we see today. Right now, the Pell Grant, about 50 years ago, covered 3/4 of the cost of attending a public 4-year university. Now it covers about 1/4. And so we have this affordability gap, this unmet financial need that students need to come up with either through loans or through other means. Programs like 1 Million Degrees are helping with that. We've been glad to see some of the investments the administration has sought and that Congress has passed around increasing the maximum Pell Grant. But right now, the aid covers less than it ever has before. My organization, TICAS, is advocating for a path to debt-free college, trying to make sure that after taking into account a reasonable work expectation and federal, state, and institutional aid, that we have an affordability guarantee, that it's possible for students to go through public college without taking on debt if they are coming from a family with less family income. So I think that that's what we need to see. We've been heartened by some of the early investments that have happened, including in Pell, including in post-secondary success grants, which is something else that we can talk more about. But there's a long way to go for us to be covering the unmet financial need of students so that they can equitably access higher education.
Can I say? we have affordability guarantees already at city colleges. And so, I think in many respects, you're just going to continue to see, localities lead the way, right, and provide the models that we need at the national level. And in our locality in Chicago, we offer STAR scholarships. So if you get a B average and you graduate from a Chicago public school, community college is completely free to you. We've been doing this now for several years with great success. We just added a new program for high demand occupations. You know, we've selected 100 high demand occupations, and we've said to Chicagoans that want to enter into those short-term programs, this is completely free to you as well. Then we're getting 90+% black and brown students from the very neighborhoods that you know, could benefit the most from this kind of a program. We haven't raised tuition now in more than 7 years. In our upcoming budget, it will be 8 years without raising tuition. And so you could take a full load at City Colleges of Chicago for less than $3,500, okay? You know, these are the efforts. You know, I can go on to describe other efforts that we have to fill the gap, right? I want to give kudos to our governor, who has just increased MAP funding. It used to be, by the way, our state aid was distributed in a way that was first come, first serve, and community college students often, you know, come to the doorstep behind other students that, you know, have been planning to go to four-year universities. They also apply for financial aid a little bit later because, you know, you sometimes have to work with your parents, you know. And so as a result of that, many community college students who needed the MAP grant the most, the state aid the most, actually didn't get it. Our governor is now fully funding, you know, MAP in our state. And what it's done is just opened the door to further affordability for community college students that come to the door at the very end. And so I think a combination of local and state efforts are going to push on the federal in order to get us there over time.
And I just wanted to quickly introduce maybe a different angle on affordability. I mentioned earlier we have a $1,000 stipend for our students. Right, so a lot of the affordability conversation, which is critical, is really restricted to specific use of funds. Our students will drop out for far less than $1,000 in terms of unexpected expenses and emergencies. And so it's also critical in the affordability conversation to think about what students need holistically in their life. And so we've seen time and time again, access to a timely payment of the stipend, we break it out into multiple payments throughout the year, can make the difference between a student staying enrolled or dropping out.
I will say one more thing about affordability, because my colleague, Dr. Janice Jackson here is in the room, who used to lead in the Chicago Public Schools and just did an incredible job as our, you know, fearless leader of Chicago Public Schools. But when I came in as chancellor, she was the chief academic officer, and she gave me a list of 10 to-dos, right? And one of those lists of 10 to-dos, and I have 3 older sisters, so I listened to, you know, I told her I can listen to 3 sisters, I can listen to 1. But one of those was to ensure we grew in a really thoughtful and organized way the partnership with the public schools. Affordability, if you're getting 15 to 30 credits while you're in high school, all of a sudden, you know, affordability, you know, equation changes. And you can start thinking about not just graduating from with a bachelor's degree, but you can start thinking about advanced degrees as well.
I want to make sure we will have time for questions if people have questions, and there'll be a different microphone passed around, and please use the microphone so they can catch it on the audio. Expansion plans, I know you ripped through it real quick, but can you just say like timeline and how this is going to proceed over the next 5 years, and what's the ultimate goal for this partnership?
So it is a little different than what OMD had been doing traditionally for all the things that Aneesh said are modifications and enhancements in this embedded model. We're going to implement it over the next 3 and 4 years. We're going to evaluate how it's going. It'll be in 4 colleges by the end of this period, and then our intent is to grow it even further. To make it available to every student coming in on the front end that fits the criteria. And by the way, this is in every student starting with us, right? There is a criteria. They need to be students that are essentially attending full time, right? On pace is what we call it, right? So they don't need to have a full load in any given semester, but if they pick up summer courses, et cetera, they're on pace to graduation within 150% time, which is 3 years. So if they meet that criteria, they're eligible for OMD. We estimate that we currently have roughly about 9,000 of those students, within our system, right, on an annual basis. And we would even have more probably if we had this program available, because this could be a nudge to those students to stay within the pace. It's my intent that it works really well, and therefore we make it available to every student over time.
And replicable, Samir? I think it was replicable across the country?
So-
Not to get ahead of ourselves, but it would be great to see this elsewhere.
Yeah, I think one of the important attributes that we're talking about today is the need for public investment to make programs sustainable, to scale them up. We were very heartened to see the initial $5 million of grants in post-secondary success put out by the administration, and Congress appropriated another $45 million at the end of last year. So it's admittedly not enough to fill the need, but it shows the leadership and commitment at the federal level to help make these proven models scalable, replicable, sustainable, and help grow them across the country.
The other thing I'd add on the chancellor said, right, they intend to pay for the whole thing starting in year 5. Of course, this is really good for students, right? And it makes business sense too. So if this works because of the model, more students enroll, more students persist, which means they take more credits, which means there's more revenue based on tuition coming to the system. So what we have to make sure is, the budget sheets balance out on that. But this makes sense for students, absolutely, and it makes business sense, which is why, independent, let's hope the federal government continues to invest, and independent of that, I think to your point about localities, this should be a no-brainer financially as well in any community.
It won't cover, I want to be clear though, it won't cover 100% of the cost, right? The added enrollment will be helpful, but I think we do need to understand at the federal level and, with all stakeholders as well, that, we're going to need to put the added investment in order to get the results.
Yeah. I just want to have an opportunity for the audience. If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand. Great. Mike? Terrific.
I'd love to just get your reaction on equitable access courseware delivery and where that can play a role in student outcomes and retention, time to graduate, and all those metrics.
Equitable access, I want to understand the question better.
Oh yeah, just the notion of taking a bundled approach to course curricula where everything's provided to students prior to the first day of class at a discount so that everyone arrives prepared, and often it takes away that friction point with the student purchasing in the store and having that sticker shock of seeing a $100 textbook when they're from a low-income household.
Yeah, so certainly, transparency in, the overall cost structure is really important, which includes books. I'll just tell you, and let me say a couple of things. First of all, we're oriented towards meta majors and pathways so that, students have, when they're coming in, a structured suite of courses that meet their needs in terms of where they want to head. And our advisors work with those students based on those meta majors and those pathways. But also, we have transparency in pricing. We don't charge added fees, so our tuition rate is our tuition rate. And we're increasingly moving towards open educational resources and working with our faculty on that, so that over time, this is not something overnight, but over time, we're not only holding the line on tuition, we are decreasing the line on books and other types of costs. And so yes, we think that's really important.
Thanks.
There was another question there.
Hi, I was wondering to Juan, you said that you were going to have psychological supports soon be 24/7. When you say 24/7, do you mean like someone can call someone or someone can walk into a building and be able to get support? I just wanted, because I feel like there's a big difference between having like a 24/7 line and a 24/7 like center.
Yeah, it's going to be the call. It's telehealth, but it will be human beings. What I love about this is it's It's not yet approved by our board, but I'm confident it will be. It will be, brought in a couple weeks. But, this is an institution that has built a set of supports that are being provided by people of color, and so this is really important. You will be able to, get telehealth, using technology, see the human being, and the human being is likely going to look like you, going to have experiences similar to yours, right? And we think that's a big difference maker. We will have the in-person, continue to have that. There's just a limited number of hours given, when we're open that we're really able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Oh, hi. Thank you all for sharing your insights. And yesterday, I was at a room like this, and the topic was on the future of higher ed, and that applied to universities, community colleges, or city colleges. And in my mind, the goals of City College are twofold. One is to help students transfer to a degree program, and the second is to help them upscale so they can get a job and go straight into the workforce. Now, the speakers at this conference talked about the future of higher ed being less degree-based and more competency-based learning and competency-based education. Now, they didn't define what that meant for them. Now, I have my own definition of what competency-based learning is, and I'm just curious for the panel, what does that mean to you, and what does that mean for community colleges or city colleges? If it seems like the future that they're projecting is less degree-based, because employers are caring less about degrees and more about the ability to perform, the ability to think, more outcome-based. What does that mean for city colleges?
Well, look, we're already doing that work, right? At the end of the day, we're meeting with employers. They're looking at our curriculum. They're giving us overall feedback. They're increasingly hiring our students. But here's the reality, right? If we're truly going to go to this competency-based system, then where the proof is? It's at the point of hire. That's where the proof is. So if it's really going to happen, then you're going to see the change in behavior, right, from the employers. And yet, I will tell you, it's really hard. I mean, we have some examples of, companies that have worked with us. Accenture's a great one. Never hired someone without a 4-year degree into their entry-level occupations. We're now one of their largest source of entry-level talent, right? They've changed the job. They've done the hard work. You got to change the job descriptions. You got to actually look at the skills and competencies. Then you got to interview people, and bring them on in structured programs, like an apprenticeship program. And so, we will continue to work with employers. We will continue to adapt our curriculum, and we'll be ready for whatever change happens. But, I think that will shift when employers start to look at something other than a 4-year degree, which is what they're looking at right now.
The thing I'll add from the student perspective here is, I agree wholeheartedly, the proof will be in the pudding when we see the work actually happening versus a lot of talk about it. And I think we need to think more broadly about the value of a college credential or degree, right? I think there's a lot more that comes to it than just directly into the first job. And where you see this really play out is in not just the first job, but opportunities for upward mobility. The vast majority of employers are still requiring either a bachelor's degree, implicitly or explicitly, in who they're putting into manager or management positions. And so I think we have to think about first job and upward mobility as well.
And I'll just add, just to underscore that we continue, while there are some short certificates that have labor market value, there are a lot that don't. And we continue to see that employers demand and that wages are better for more education at the 2-year level, at the 4-year degree level. And so I think that there may be shifts in the years to come, and it'll be important to track that. But I think it's important to continue to follow where the labor market data and employers are telling us they're interested, which is around those longer degree programs. And ultimately, I think we have a crisis around the perceived value of higher education. And that crisis is stemming in large part from the shift, the transfer of risk onto students and families of getting a degree in the form of declining affordability and more student loan debt. And so I think that that's what we need to address in order to restore the value of higher ed degrees. We continue to see a lot of payoff on the labor market side, but the investment that's required has changed.
Okay, we are officially out of time. We're 30 seconds over, so thank you to this panel. And thank you to all of you who joined us today.